Welcome to Paper Movies, a novelization book club, where we pick a novelization, read it, and discuss it. Now, this episode is going to be a little bit different from our regular format. Adam and Jeremy will be with us in May to discuss Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 in our regular discussion format. For this episode, I spoke with Alex Newborn, a Ghostbusters fanatic from the YouTube channel LexTheRobot. Now, I've been a long-time subscriber of Alex, and when we made the decision to read Ghostbusters, the novelization, I knew that we just had to have him on here to discuss it. Unfortunately, schedules did not line up like we had anticipated. Jeremy, Adam, and myself will have a full discussion on Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 in but until then, we managed to get Alex on here and have him give his thoughts on the novel, as well as some other little interesting tidbits about Ghostbusters. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have Alex Newborn. Alex, welcome to Paper Movies.
Hi, Matthew. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Alex Newborn. My YouTube channel, LexTheRobot, I have mentioned the novelization by Richard Mueller so many times, especially in a video series I did called My Ghostbusters Pet Peeves. As soon as Matthew said, hey, do you want to participate in this? I said, I am there.
And we're happy to have you here. So can you give us any little insights about this book?
So a quick bit of background on the book. The cover appeared in both the standard Moogly, the way it appears on their uniforms in the film, and also in the UK mirror image Moogly. Now, this is the UK novelization by Larry Milne, completely different book, came out in '84. The Muller novelization for the US came out in '85, and initially was backwards. Reprints have it the right way, and for some reason, the backwards one is much thinner. I don't know why.
See, that's interesting, and kind of funny because I have a copy of the backwards logo book. Never noticed that until you mentioned it. You could see here my copy beat up really bad. It's got some water damage on it. The cover being held on by Scotch tape. Got this on a road trip when I was a kid. Family, we were all going out to North Carolina to visit my dad's side of the family. We stopped in a gas station. They had a book rack on the inside. Saw this on the book rack, and I was lucky that my parents were like, okay, yeah, sure, you can have it. So I've actually never read this copy. I'm scared to open it up because the cover will fall off, I'm sure, and I'm sure some pages will also fall out. But yeah, never been able to find it in a bookstore since. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on the author Richard Mueller's writing style?
I really enjoyed his writing style in this. There were places that he was clearly familiar with the geography and sort of the vibe of New York City that he got really, really right in this, which I don't feel Milne translated as well for his UK readers as Mueller did for his American readers.
I don't know if anything else Richard Mueller has written. I haven't looked into his other works, but I got the vibe that he likes to keep things family friendly. I like that there really wasn't a lot of swear words like we did get some in the film. It wasn't extreme, but we did have some of that stuff in the film.
It's sort of like a stepping stone to the real Ghostbusters in that it showed you how easily the movie could have been G-rated. Instead of all the dirty words that are in the movie, you find jerk or jerk bag used as an insult about 8 times in this. And also you have a wonderful line for Winston where he says, since I joined these men, I have seen jazz that will boggle your mind. That's a good line. I feel like he did a pass that had the swear words in, and then he went back and changed them all, because there's one moment where Ray says, baloney, in front of the Archbishop, and then he's like, oh, sorry, Archbishop, like, chagrined that he said that. Why would he be chagrined about the word baloney? Yeah, it's very clean. It almost feels like a stepping stone for getting to the cartoon. It's like, how clean can we make these characters? And then '87, they turned him into a Saturday morning children's cartoon. There were other things that Mueller kind of anticipated. There's a great scene, I love this little scene, where Ray lowers a small trap down from the attic in the firehouse, and he goes, hey, guys, I just caught a ghost, a little one, right in our own attic. I'm like, oh, a pet ghost, that's a great idea. Cartoon comes along, pet ghost, Slimer, lives in the firehouse with them. It's like, wait a second. There were several little things like that Mueller anticipated or created in this. A reference to Atari with ghosts, blasting ghosts from the Ecto, as they're going down the street. And I'm like, hello, that's the trailer for Afterlife, back in a book from 1985, right there. He's anticipating things that came to pass in the second film or the cartoon series or now Afterlife that we're still waiting on it to come out. There's a moment with the mayor thinking, well, that thing that came out of my shower last night was real. And I'm like, well, that's almost the Fiorello LaGuardia speech from Ghostbusters 2. And this is something Mueller added in the novelization for the first film. Also, I'm pretty sure that there was a pass to rewrite the book after Mueller had seen the film, because the character of Jennifer was apparently originally named Brenda, and he went back and changed all the Brendas to Jennifers, but he missed 2 of them, so there's twice that her name is still Brenda in the book, even though she's Jennifer in every other instance.
Huh, well, this is the copy that I read, and now I'm curious to know if I missed the typos or if they were corrected. That's got me real curious now. So, Alex, what else has Richard Mueller done for you in this book that's made you happy?
Just as with the Star Wars radio dramas written by Brian Daley, I find it really cool when an author sees a problem with something, questions something, and addresses it for the listener or for the reader. And Mueller did that several times in the book as well. For instance, how do the garage doors open when Ecto is about to leave for the Sedgwick on the first bust? Well, it says in the book, Janine has a clicker and she opens the garage doors for them to drive out. Things like that were explained. And how does Janine get to Central Park West? Well, we see her in a deleted scene and she's at the loading dock at City Hall. Well, right here in the book, he's got Janine going with them in the car. She's there when the sinkhole happens. She's the first one to go over to the hole and see that they're okay. So, yeah, there were little things that he was noticing that needed to be addressed. For instance, why are only Stantz and Venkman having the conversation about going into business for themselves? Well, he gives the explanation. Because they had no living parents, Egon had gone to phone his mother and tell her the bad news. I never questioned it as a viewer, where's Egon in this scene? But Mueller did. Mueller came up with reasons to address these things, and he explained it, even though I wasn't wondering. In the montage section of the book, it's got pretty much everything that's in the movie in there, as far as I could tell. Everything dialogue-wise from the movie, everything that was in the script. And then it has a few other things, like it's got the Ecto frying the parking ticket scene in there. Then it has a few things of his own invention, and some of them were eerily prescient. It mentions that when Ghostbusters became successful, all these companies were contacting them, right? Like wanting to merchandise them. So you've got TSR, Revell Model Kits, Marvel Comics, Industrial Light and Magic were all specifically mentioned, and although it wasn't necessarily those companies, all those kind of came true. I mean, there were Ghostbusters role-playing games. There were Ghostbusters model kits. There were Ghostbusters comic books. So he was pretty, hitting the nail on the head there. Industrial Light and Magic actually did the special effects for the second film. So there you go. He also mentions Isaac Asimov, and there's that great story on the commentary track about the traffic getting backed up from the filming of the sinkhole scene outside of Central Park West. And Dan Aykroyd sees Isaac Asimov and he goes over to introduce himself. Yeah, we're here making this movie. And Isaac Asimov's like, I think it's disgusting, because he couldn't get home. So that was funny that his name is dropped in the novelization, as well as when Venkman goes on Late Night with David Letterman, he name drops Larry Bud Melman. Now, it's a funny joke in and of itself. I love the setup when they're talking about Carson. Tonight, Johnny's guests include Arnold Schwarzenegger, Charo, 82-year-old hooker Nancy Winky, and Ghostbuster Egon Spengler. It was very 80s. It was all very 80s. But he mentions Larry Bud Melman in the green room was the most scary thing he'd seen since becoming a Ghostbuster. All right. That works on 2 levels, because Larry Bud Melman was in the music video for the Busboys Ghostbusters Cleaning Up the Town soundtrack selection. And years later, I found out that in 1984, Larry Bud Melman, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray were all in a movie together called Nothing Lasts Forever, starring Zach Galligan of Gremlins. So yeah, the Larry Bud Melman joke, every time I go back and reread that novel, it pays off in another dividend for me.
Well said, and yet you've brought up some very interesting points there with Richard Mueller tapping into so much stuff before everything really exploded with Ghostbusters. So Alex, can you go ahead and get into a little bit of the character development, your thoughts on the character development in the Ghostbusters novelization?
Some of my favorite things in the book have to do with the character development. Now, bear in mind, I read this in '85, and I thought, oh man, there's so much great material in here. He really understands these characters. Then over the years, like I would get a copy of the script, or I would get the DVD and see the deleted scenes, and I realized that a lot of those things that I thought he really nailed were things that Aykroyd and Ramis had written. But there's still content in here that is exclusive to this author, and it tends to be, we can focus now on these little chapters where we find out background about the characters, things about them before the beginning of the film, such as Egon's childhood, Egon and Peter and Ray's relationship in college. I love the scene where Egon invents a death ray. He tries to make a death ray, but all it will do is make soda cans explode. And so Venkman gets drunk one night, takes it to the local Coca-Cola warehouse, and starts setting off cans. After which Egon decides that he has to dismantle this device. And I'm like, that works on so many levels. I mean, that you're talking about the fact that they build their own equipment. You're talking about Venkman's personality, Egon's personality. Egon would definitely be a scientist that would work on an atomic bomb, never picturing the ramifications of something like that. And then once he saw it demonstrated, he would say, no, this is too dangerous, and take it away from humanity. I mean, it all those little details work. You've got scenes with Dana's childhood. You've got a wonderful scene with explaining why Ray's parents left him the house after they met Peter Venkman. I mean, that's a wonderful scene, and it's so full of great characters. By the way, that house was not the house we see in Afterlife. It's supposed to be in Islip. But another good one is there's a scene where Venkman is thinking about his dad, who ran a carnival, and wishing that his old man had lived to, see him successful. And it's kind of interesting because the same Richard Mueller that said Peter Venkman had no living parents, Ray Stantz had no living parents, and that Peter wished his father had lived to see him successful, is the same guy that created the character of Peter Venkman's dad on the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. Same author. So I don't know what happened there. The defense for me always is the episode Take Two, where we find out that the movie, and I guess its novelization, are the fictionalized account of the lives of the real Ghostbusters, hence the title. But there's this great scene where Venkman gets a phone call from a newspaper that had kind of libeled them, libel, slander, and he makes the guy print a retraction, apologize to them, apologize to their families, and then he hangs up the phone and he's like, hey, Winston, you remember that class 9 we dropped off? Turns out they don't want it. That's a wonderful bit of character. The only thing that I dislike about it is I feel like it should have been Dean Yeager calling to say we've got a ghost, and that Peter Venkman had done that to Dean Yeager. That's the only thing I feel like could make it better, because Mueller was great at taking little one-off characters and kind of giving them a little mini arc in the story. There's a street punk that talks to Egon after the first bust, and then there's these muggers that accost Vince Clortho. And so he turned that into one character. He turned that into Mr. Dave, whereas in the script it was 2 different characters, and this one was called Gino. He gave it a through line and had a payoff for Mr. Dave, indicating that it was the same guy that had, talked to Egon Spengler earlier in the book. So those kind of things were great. I feel like a little missed opportunity there was having the newspaper phone call be Dean Yeager.
Yeah, see, that would have been hilarious. Brought it back full circle. I like your thinking, Alex. So go ahead and tell me a little bit more about your dislikes for the book.
One of the things I didn't like about the novelization, it always made me cringe. This isn't just me virtue signaling. It always bothered me, not just because of social things, but because of the construction of the scene. The first time Ray meets Winston, he looks at him and says, "Hey, you're black." Nobody says something like that. Nobody observes a thing like that. And I felt like what he was trying to do was the same thing that Brian Daley did with the Star Wars radio dramas. He was trying to put visual descriptions into the dialogue But Mueller had narration. Mueller could have simply put that description in the narration, and he did in a later scene in the mayor's office. So that could have happened there. Why put it into the dialogue so clunkily? But the redeeming thing about that is Winston's response where he goes, "Yes, I know." Wonderful line for Winston. One minor pet peeve is that occasionally lines are said by other characters than what we see in the film. For instance, "I love this town" is said by Venkman, not Winston, or "dropping off or picking up" is said to Janine by Egon. So things like that, kind of like, oh man, he's so close to having it exactly like the movie, but he gave it to the wrong character. But I find that a lot of them work, and probably the reason for that, if I sit and think about it, is the fact that on the set, when they would come up with a great line of dialogue, they would go, "Hey, why don't you take this line? No, you take this line." So the lines were able to be said by different characters. They'd put their own spin on it. It doesn't feel quite right in this one. But the flavor of a scene is always there, even if the specific lines of dialogue are not.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on the whole Winston thing, but I feel like they really wanted to have a racial joke in there somewhere for some reason, and I think it was delivered best by Winston himself when they were in the mayor's office when he says, like, "Oh, I've seen crap that'll turn you white," and it has one of the officials in the mayor's office just kind of like covers up his face. So I think that's what they're going for, and they thought maybe Ray shouldn't say that line in the film. Pays off better when Winston says it. But Alex, what else? Is there anything else that you dislike or that you think might hurt the story a little bit?
The weird thing about this one being written in 85 versus this one having been written in 84 was that you got a lot of lines are missing, and they seem to be the Bill Murray improvisations on set. So how come a year after the movie came out, those lines are not in there? Several of the more quotable Ghostbusters lines don't appear in this. It adheres a little, more strictly to the script than what the film itself became.
Okay. So we don't like to end things on dislikes. What things do you like most about this novelization? What really enhances the story? What little cool things did the novel have that just made you happy?
The egg roll scene, the ERM scene, which is just before Venkman comes back from his date with Dana, and Egon and Ray are having this discussion about if this egg roll represents the psychic potential of a single person and you combine two egg rolls. And it not only is introduced then as Mueller's own invention, very in the flavor of the Twinkie analogy, obviously, but then it's continued throughout. It will reappear multiple times throughout the book. Hey, remember the ERM talk we had? Right before, in the middle of the Twinkie scene, at the end of the Twinkie scene, right before they are fighting Gozer, I think. It just keeps popping up, and it's given this life of its own throughout. But it's Mueller's invention as far as I could tell. Another interesting thing that occurs throughout the book is the gear is not quite called what we expect it to. Instead of ecto goggles, they're called a trinocular visors, things like that. And the PKE meter is there, but in early scenes it's called an auroscope. Egon also has another device called a plasmatometer. I'm not sure what that is. It talks about Ray having a PKE meter at the Sedgwick. It talks about Peter having a PKE meter at the Sedgwick. And the only thing I could picture is the only thing both of them are carrying would be like their gizmo on their belt. Egon then finally uses a PKE meter when they're on the rooftop and he's scanning for Gozer, and it immediately shorts out. So they didn't quite have the terminology what it became over time. They do call them proton packs. But Egon also has a PKE gauge on the roof of the firehouse, and it gets sucked into the ghost geyser when that happens. So yeah, some interesting gear, some interesting different names for gear. Instead of an aura video analyzer for the colander that they scan the Keymaster with, it's a archetype transliterator. It's just, there's some great terminology thrown out there as well.
The egg roll stuff was funny. I like how it kept being brought back up throughout the story. So before we get to the recommendation section, is there anything else, any random items that you would like to throw out about the novelization?
Now, I sympathize with anybody that ever says on social media or wherever, "Oh, the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, I just got that." Because it was not until many, many, many readings of this book that one line illustrated it for me, and the light bulb went off. It's on page 219. Vince Clortho, Keymaster of Gozer, rushed to the joining as he and Zool merged. She was the gatekeeper, and his key was ready. I needed it spelled out for me that bad. So well into my teens, if not 20s. And I was 14 when the movie came out. So it took me a little while before I understood what the lines of dialogue were referring to there.
Okay.
Another funny thing about the two bums in the novelization by Mueller is that he said that the one that got played by Bill Murray in the movie wanted to be a jockey, or was a jockey, until he had a growth spurt. And the one played by Aykroyd wanted to be a singer and had everything going for him except a voice. Now, that reads okay on the page in 1985, but it wasn't until 1999 that the joke paid off. Because you finally got the DVD with the deleted scene, and you heard Aykroyd talking in a voice like this. It's like, oh my, that's the one that wanted to be a singer? That's funny. It was a long joke, and Mueller had no idea whether or not that was going to pay off for anybody. So, on page 64 of this book is my own private Mandela effect happening, because Dana is seeing the guy's commercial on her TV in her apartment. By the way, it's on page 64 of both of these copies. So even the one that's thinner has the same page layout. So I guess it's just thicker paper on this one? I don't know. But she sees the commercial, We're Ready to Believe You, and she thinks to herself, it was too early for Monty Python, but this had to be a parody. I swear when I read this book in the 80s, that line was too early for Saturday Night Live, but it had to be a parody. If I imagine that myself, boy, it took root. Because I do not remember it being Monty Python. I didn't expect it to be Monty Python. Nobody expects it to be Monty Python. Also, there's a neat little thing that he did, and I don't know that until I was rereading this specifically for this project that I'd ever caught it before. But there's the deleted scene back in when Egon tells Janine, you have nice clavicles. At the very end, when she rushes up to him and says, oh, Egon, and they're hugging outside of Central Park West, Janine tells Egon, you have nice clavicles, which was a nice little callback. It was sort of the I love you, I know Han Solo, Princess Leia moment for the two characters. And I think I've always just read that as, Egon said the same line he said before. No, Janine's saying that to him.
See, that reminds me of one of my favorite jokes in Ghostbusters. At the beginning, when they're at the library, they have their first encounter with the ghost, and Ray tells them, like, just do as I say, get her. And at the end, when they're facing Gozer, Peter looks over at Ray and says, go get her, Ray. And they have that little, they look at each other. It's just one of my favorite things. I love how it just came full circle. But Alex, go ahead and give us your rating. How do you rate this book, and do you recommend it?
I would not rate this quite as highly as the novel of The Abyss by Orson Scott Card, which is, my pinnacle of movie adaptation for book. He did something amazing with that. They sent him the dailies on video cassette. He rewrote it. And he had chapters, as Mueller did, that gave you the backstory of the characters before we meet them in the timeline of the film. But a close second. Mueller's Ghostbusters Supernatural Spectacular, a close second to my favorite movie adaptation into novel form, being The Abyss. So yes, cannot recommend it highly enough. Check this out. This is an original, but I mean, it's had a recent reprint along with the novelization for Ghostbusters 2, so you can get your hands on a copy. Otherwise, you can find a PDF form on Spook Central, various things. It's out there. You can get your hands on it. You can read it. Why aren't you reading it? You find out so much more about Ghostbusters, and it gives you an extrapolated, expanded version of it, because almost all of the deleted scenes are in. The only one I could think of that's not in is Winston saying, let's get on a plane right now, before they go upstairs to, fight Gozer. That's the only one that I noticed as I reread it that was not present.
Okay, awesome. Well, you have me intrigued to read The Abyss. I do have a copy of the novelization. I haven't read it, clearly, but I don't even think I've seen the film, so you have me wanting to crack that book open and give it a read-through, so I might need to do that pretty soon. Alex, thank you so much for joining us here on the Paper Movies channel.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. Thanks, Matthew, for inviting me, and thanks for incorporating me into this. I know you had to kind of work around my schedule. Our schedules weren't compatible, but thanks for including me, and we will see you guys on the next one. Hopefully, fingers crossed, whenever you get ready to do the Mill novelization, just tell a guy, and I'll do another one of these for you.
All right, well, I'll hold you to it. I have not yet read the Larry Milne novelization, and like I said, The Abyss, you gave that one high praise, so I might need to open up that one sooner than later. So if I do, I know who I'm going to call. Alex, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube as LexTheRobot. On other social media, I usually go by my real name. GB Fans Forums, I go by my real name. I think on the RPF, I am Doc Newborn. That pretty much covers it. If you want to email me, pluvo2for1@aol.com.
All right, cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, join us in the next episode when Jeremy and Adam return, and the three of us will discuss our opinion and thoughts on the Ghostbusters 1 and 2 novelizations. Until then, have a good one, Alex. Thank you, and we'll see you around.
Thanks for having me.